Philosophers talk to our times. On a rainy day in the deep south of France, where it's snowing on the Pyrenees, and I'm waiting to go into the clinic. And I'm always on Spinoza at times of trial, because I find him in endless comfort. So there's going to be a lot of these that are going to be on Spinoza. And one of the things I love about Spinoza is the way he tries to persuade me that pleasure and pain are not only not at all alike, but that we enslave ourselves by confusing them. You see, for Spinoza, pleasure is literally the transformation from a lower power to a higher power. And what he means by that is that as you feel pleasure, you are able to do more things. You are part of more things. You're more alive. You're more in the world. He calls it you increase your capacity to act. So you are more vibrant. You are more in the middle of everything that you could be and will be. And yeah, pain is the opposite. Pain is that transformation by which you lose reality. And it is the feeling of the losing of reality. It is interesting that neither exists, strictly speaking, in God, but God can encompass pleasure, but he can't encompass pain. It is an idea that God who is always just the middle itself, is incapable of feeling. That means something for Spinoza. You see, for Spinoza, joy is always like a schemata. It's always something you should follow. Follow your joys and see where they lead. Follow your pleasures. Because it is through pleasure that if you pull it right and understand it correctly, you'll reach how you're already part of a wider universe. It will then spin off into common notions, that is, creations of reason. Allow you to think new thoughts. You need to turn your pleasures then, your deepest joys, into agents for reason, to help you re-understand the world, to think and to rethink where that pleasure comes from. Do you see there's a damp dog with me? It makes it even more fun. Pain, by contrast, you can learn nothing from. Except one thing. You see, Spinoza is very aware of how much humans must hate pain. It's the only reaction to it is hatred. Because the only thing humans can do when deprived of their power is to run away from it, to fight against it. And yet it is so dangerous, because where pleasure opens out on more reality, pain only opens out on nothing. Nothing at all. And this is the danger of ideas like pleasure and pain. Because by setting them up, you will try to understand one through the maze of the other. And they're just different. Pain is elusive. You can never find it. It will always be elsewhere. All you can do is rail against it. The sensible thing to do is always to flee, to run, because hatred won't help you much more. While pleasure opens on the world of reason, on all that could be, on the other thoughts you can have. Pleasure then is always positive. But if you confuse the two, it is likely or not that you will confuse pleasure with pain, because you spend a lot of your life trying to run away from it. Pleasure then becomes an inadequate idea. It becomes something that doesn't lead to reason, something that you pursue only for itself, only in the opposite of pain. It loses sight of what it is. And the minute pleasure loses the sight of what it can truly be, how it augments, enriches, combines, reflects desire, then you've lost sight of everything you can do. Effectively, you cut yourself off from your own ability to change. You become hypnotized by pain. You become hypnotized by the stubborn affects that lodge in your mind, that you can't ever quite escape, and that to escape from, you always just think, well, or you fight against, and your pleasure simply becomes escaping from your pain. And that is so dangerous, because that means that you have an unstable thing that you can't fix, pain, that bleeds across the mind, spewing off hate, and then spewing off false positives that are only defined in the reaction to the hatred. And isn't this the world we live in now? A world defined by fear. There's a world where pleasure itself is defined by fear. And a world where pleasure itself can only be defined by fear is frankly an awesomely dangerous place. How could it be anything else? Because the pain will bleed across the mind as you find other ways to express itself in hate and in fear. And in your reactions to them, in your obsessions against them. And Spinoza says, in all of this, it's not that the human mind is wrong to do this, not ontologically wrong. Of course you struggle against your pain, of course you do. The mistake is to understand it as a thing, because the minute you understand it as a thing, it will immediately encompass, comprehend what pleasure is. And the minute it does that, you're as good as lost already. So the thing, I guess, to do, and to always remind yourself, as you are racked by feelings of fear or hatred, is that the game is to quarantine and not to bleed. Thoughts like that will bleed across until in the end you find yourself on strange dark journeys. Dark journeys that warp your soul, that change what you could be. When you suffer a pain then, the game is to keep it in a box, in itself alone. Allow it to be. Don't repress or struggle against it. I'm not saying that. But keep it for what it is. A diminution, a lossing, a break from everything that you have been and everything that you will be again. Because then you will stop railing against your fate, and that will allow you to embrace it.